Reviews and Men.
Hey, welcome to the podcast. I'm Darian, and my co-host today is Dustin Jones, local band member, Special C, surfer, neighbor.
How's it going? Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming over, man. And today we got a special guest, Gary Ferguson, drummer extraordinaire. Why don't you tell people a little bit about who you've played
Extraordinaire.
Shirley Bassey in the early 70s, and then moving through the 70s and 80s.
Shirley Bassey did the James Bond stuff,
yeah,
right?
I played on that. That's me on the first James Bond.
Way.
Goldfinger.
Legendary.
That's me on Goldfinger.
No way.
Killer.
Yeah, that's when I grew up. I was about 2 then.
Do you trip out when you hear that? Yeah, that's awesome.
No, we did. That was my first real session. I played with Shirley Bassey when I was like 17. I think I got called out, and so it was the first thing that I did that was actually went out on vinyl. That was like a real record. So I was like pretty stoked. I think it was.
I miss records.
I was in high. What? Yeah, records. Remember those?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you played with like Gary Moore, John Hyatt.
Yes.
Eddie Money.
That's
how I first
Geezer
knew about
Butler.
you. Yeah.
As I get older,
Oh,
it's
wow.
my favorite gig that I did. My gig with Geezer Butler.
Oh, killer.
Yeah.
Killer.
No, I played with a lot of people. Ray Charles and Etta James.
Wow, dude.
Oh, man.
Billy Preston, Cher, Olivia Newton-John. You know, we'll probably think of more as
the
we
list
go on.
is long and varied,
you know,
but yeah, it's killer. Awesome. Thanks for coming over, man.
You're welcome.
And you want to just dive right in? You probably have stuff to do.
Yeah, let's dive in,
don't.
man.
We don't,
jump.
but you probably do.
You guys,
I know.
yeah,
I'll be here all day.
I've got to go look at longboards. You know,
Right.
I got to get out of here.
Yeah, I got 2
I gotta get
surfers
down.
in the house today.
It's a good longboard day.
Yeah.
Dustin, you want to start off with the first story?
Absolutely. Couple jewel thieves were found at a chicken place. How does this
Just read it.
connect here?
Just read the story. Don't
Jewel
try to figure
thieves?
it. Don't try to figure it out. You get
This
confused.
is very
Just
confusing.
read the title.
Let's see. 2 would-be jewel thieves found fried chicken instead of fine jewelry.
Where did that happen?
When they burrowed through a wall into the wrong store.
What area is that? What's the location?
Is that's Bow Desert? Never heard of that place.
What state?
Southwest of Brisbane.
Oh, it's
So,
Australia.
so
that's
in
in
Australia,
Australia.
down
Yeah.
under.
Oh,
so-
no wonder.
You've been there.
Right.
You've been there, Gary, right?
I have.
You know, I would rather
Good
have
for
chicken
surfing, but probably
than
not for
jewelry.
stealing shit.
Yeah, no, yeah. You wouldn't want to go down there and try to steal jewelry. you know?
yeah. So what happened, Dustin?
Maybe they were just hungry.
Read a little bit.
They expected to arrive at Wright's Jewelers, but instead landed in the local KFC, where they surprised junior staff.
That's awesome. Just can you imagine you're working at KFC as a kid and just some dude pops out of the ground?
So
with
they tunneled up from the bottom,
Yeah.
right into the colonel's urinal.
so
But
rad.
I admire them because they didn't deviate, because undeterred,
They said, "Give me your jewelry."
the pair stage an impromptu holdup and escape with like almost $3,000.
Oh no way!
So yeah,
So
and
it
chicken,
was at least enough to pay for the shovels. And
some money, some chicken. I mean, it wasn't a total loss.
I wonder if Colonel Sanders chicken tastes the same in Australia as it does here.
It's
Original
probably better.
recipe.
You know what?
Worldwide recipe.
When I have hamburgers like in Japan, it tastes way better. You notice that?
Kobe
Yeah.
quarter pounder.
No, it's just like if you order a McDonald's Big Mac or something, it tastes like how McDonald's was in the 70s when it was still good.
Well, Burger King just got outed for using horse meat in their burgers.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, so
I think Australia's exporting it.
yeah, they were exporting kangaroo meat for
I was
a
going
while.
to say
right.
some kangaroo.
That's pretty rad.
That's a
Koala?
fact, though. I think it was Jack in the Box got caught for putting kangaroo meat in some of their
I mean,
burgers and stuff.
The ironic thing is if they advertise it, it'd probably be a hot seller.
I'm,
So they try to sneak it in and they got busted.
you know what?
I
I
would try
want
it.
koala nuggets right now.
Oh, my God.
I would eat those right now.
That's nasty.
How do you know? I don't know about that.
Can you scroll up to the next story?
Are we done with that
tab
one? The jewel thieves?
I think it's pretty awesome.
That is
but,
rad.
it's kind of
I
self-explanatory.
like their tenacity.
yeah.
Okay, this is awful. Didn't this start in Japan with cramming feet in shoes? But
What
listen
is
to
it?
this.
What is?
Off with her toes. Growing number of women shortening or removing toes to wear high heels.
No,
Are you
that's
kidding me?
That's
No
insane.
joke.
I mean,
Ouch.
yeah, you're talking about the Chinese women binding their
There we
feet.
go. Yeah, let's take it up a notch
Yeah, that's just chop the
with
toe
Western
right off.
vanity and just lose them. Just
But
lob them off.
Is that an Asian thing? Where's that happening?
This says women everywhere. Apparently, growing number of women are having their toes shortened or even
It's
completely
just all
removed.
like worldwide, a global phenomenon of women chopping their toes off.
According to the American
I haven't
Pediatric
encountered it.
Medical Association, yes.
I don't know anybody that's cut off their toes
I mean,
yet.
Ferg, would you be attracted to a woman that has like missing digits?
It depends what her shoes look like. How high those heels are, you know?
I think you don't know until they come off.
No, I think that would be freaky to have someone with removed toes. That would totally freak me out.
I mean, it would totally freak me out. I'd be like, wait, what? You did that on purpose? What?
I'm not a good dancer anyway, so I think
that would definitely mess up your Dancing with the
roll with
Stars
it.
kind of.
But toes really help you with your balance,
Yeah,
and
totally.
you need to have them. So
That's why they're there.
to remove your toes for that's just bizarre.
Way bizarre.
Well,
But
maybe that's
what
where
the
we're
show's all
headed.
about. Bizarre.
Maybe that's where we're headed, though, because according to American Pediatric Medical Association, 87% of women have severe foot problems from wearing uncomfortable or heel-lifting shoes.
I'm
So-
all for girls wearing
Yeah,
comfortable shoes.
I mean,
As am I.
sensible shoes is happening, but taking your toes off to
And
get to
Toes are cool.
yeah, it's not attractive. Don't do that.
Frightening.
Yeah,
I think I have on that same like sticking with the women kind of vein for a minute. I think this is totally happening, and I encourage this. Topless protesters take on elite Davos forum. I'm totally backing that.
more
I
topless
think
protesting.
you can be way more effective by being a topless protester. So this is that Davos conference in Switzerland where they have all the like elite people telling all the peons what they're going to be doing, like us. Three women. This is how big the protest was. 3 women angry over sexism and male domination of the world economy ripped off their shirts and tried to force their way into a gathering of corporate elites in a Swiss resort. I mean, nobody would even pay them any attention if they just rolled up and said, "This is terrible."
I was going to say 3
That's
women
like
with their shirts off.
That's your trump card.
That's been
right
working
there.
in rock and roll
changes.
for a long time. Take off your tops.
So it's like, it's
Change
coming
the
to
world.
politics. What do they say about politics? It's show business for ugly people. That's awesome. What do you have another story there, Dustin?
Oh, I've been looking forward to this one. I don't even know what a PACU is, but I'm looking at a fish with teeth bigger than mine.
Oh man.
And apparently they caught one in Illinois. Illinois.
Yeah, Illinois.
How do you say that lake?
Illinois.
Lake Lou Yeager? Regardless, this fish will bite your testicles.
Read the title.
Oh my God, I'm kind of scared. PACU testicle-eating fish species caught in Lake Lou Yeager in Illinois.
Wow. So they should probably put up a sign that says no swimming, especially for males, right?
Yeah.
Read a little more of the story.
I think these fish probably breed quite fast too. Isn't this an Asian variety? They're
I
like
don't know. Read the story.
invasive species. We're stoked. When biologists say the PACU fish eats nuts, they may be correct in more ways than one.
That's hideous. Dude.
I thought, the PACU, a toothy fish that can weigh up to 55 pounds. Are you kidding me?
Whoa. I thought it was like some
This
little
got
fish
way
attacking.
scarier, dude.
Yeah, that's hideous.
It's been spotted in Lake Lou Yeager in Illinois, KSDK reports. Responding to a report that a fisherman had reeled in a piranha on June 7th. Lake
piranha? What the hell's going on with that lake,
looks
man?
kind of like one.
I mean, look, both of you guys surf. Gary, have you ever been in the ocean and had some, like, I'm sure you didn't have an experience like that, but have you ever seen like a shark swim past you or something crazy?
I've seen small sharks, and I've stepped on stingrays
I
and
did
stuff like that.
Oh, that was
Yeah.
brutal. I
You
did
know,
that in Florida.
Kick Corbina.
But this whole freshwater fish thing, people are getting some of these fish from Asia and from South America as pets, and then they don't want them and they throw them out. They flush them down the toilet, or
They dump it into
and then
other
these
lakes.
things thrive, and they go in and they just eat everything. Some of them eat the birds' eggs. They eat the other indigenous fish, and so it's. I think if you investigate, you'll see that we're being invaded by some of these Asian and South American fish in our.
Yeah, and a lot of, I think I read that a lot of Chinese will get some of these kind of fish for medicinal purposes. And then
I've
they
heard
end
that
up
too.
dumping them into the local
Right.
water. And I don't understand what the purpose, what any like good purpose of a testicle eating fish could possibly be. Like they should eradicate that off of the planet.
Well, if they get to be 55 pounds, maybe we should catch them and eat them. I mean,
no, I would. No, I think we should just kill them, dude. Kill them all.
Take them out.
That's not good.
But in the ocean, no. I've seen what I see regularly are dolphins.
Yeah, you see a lot.
I see lots of dolphins.
They come right up to you when you're surfing.
They get pretty close. They actually swim under the board sometimes, or swim under you.
No way.
Yeah,
Yep.
they go in pods of them, and it's pretty cool.
Have you ever nicked a dolphin with your board?
No, but I've had one jump over me.
Oh my god!
Yeah, I did. I had one jump over me once.
An 800-pound bull dolphin.
That's rad.
And actually, one of the funniest things that happened to me, I was in Costa Rica surfing, and it's this place called Playa Hermosa, and it was time of year that these rays were mating, and so when the rays start mating, they all start jumping out of the water.
Oh yeah.
And so I mean, I'm out there surfing. There must have been hundreds of them jumping out of the water, and one of them jumped over me literally, and I screamed like a baby. And these guys from Florida were there.
Yeah.
These guys from Florida were there, and they just made fun of me for the rest of the day. And then I ran into them later that night at a bar, and they were like, "Oh!" They totally ridiculed me because I was so terrified by this ray that jumped over me. They teased me incessantly.
But those things, was it
That's
the really
insane.
big rays?
No,
like
not
a
really
manta
big.
ray?
Well, they were not a manta ray. They were like stingrays, I think is what they are. They're probably like maybe 3 feet, wide by about
Still
3,
pretty
3.
frightening.
But
Probably.
with a venom, with like stingers on their tail that can have venom, so you don't want these things to snag you.
No.
But it just scared me, It's
I can imagine.
and they were everywhere. There was hundreds of them jumping around.
Wow.
Yeah. So, but out here where we live, dolphins and are pretty much what I see
pretty
mostly.
common.
Yeah, I haven't really seen
Small leopard sharks, maybe, huh?
Have you seen one?
Yeah, the
Yeah,
polka
sand
dot
sharks?
little dudes. Yeah,
Yeah.
shovel nose,
Yeah.
angel
Yeah,
shark.
I've seen a couple of those.
Yeah.
So check out this story. When you're a musician starting out and you're gigging and you learn that cardinal rule not to leave your crap in your car.
Oh,
like
God.
you know how many stories you've heard of guys that going, man, I was just so tired. I unloaded all my stuff after the gig. I got home at 3 a.m. and I was too tired to load it out, and somebody swiped it right when I was sleeping. So we learned that rule. Apparently these people didn't, because here's the title. $400,000 in diamond stolen from a car parked in an Orlando restaurant. I mean, that doesn't seem too bright to keep $500,000 worth of diamonds in your car while you're eating.
In your Dodge Stratus.
Yeah.
That's awful.
Orlando police are investigating what could be a simple car burglary or an elaborate diamond theft. The call came in during 7 p.m. hour Monday at the Sweet Tomatoes restaurant on the corner of International Drive in Kirkland. This is I think this might be a Florida story.
Sounds like
Yeah,
it.
Orlando, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. They met with the victim. He described that his car had been broken into and showed where it had been broken into, and there's a big bag missing. The victim stated that the bag contained about $400,000 worth of diamonds. I wonder if that's like he stole the diamonds, somebody else got onto it. Why? That seems really weird, keeping diamonds in a bag.
I don't know. Maybe he sold them and then is trying to get the insurance money.
Yeah.
Double dipping on that deal.
Young said that this kind of crime is common, but what was taken is not.
Well, what would you do with $400,000 worth of diamonds? How would you fence those? I mean, would you go to a...
I mean, you'd have to. You probably wouldn't get anywhere near face value for them, right?
I wouldn't think so.
Well, obviously, he had to sit down at the Sweet Tomato and have a meal and think about what he's going to do with them.
Okay, how am I going to off these that I just ripped off from
What, were they visible? I mean,
no.
you'd think
he
that...
said it was in a bag, so...
Where, in the trunk or in the back seat?
I don't know. Let's see.
Yeah, he put them on the front seat.
Yeah, it said the bag was sitting on a seat, so obviously the criminal took that opportunity and took the bag. It could be a case of like they had no idea what was in the bag and they just took it.
Or it could have been his bro that knew exactly what it was and just waited until he pulled
Insider.
over and snagged him.
I think it might be some insider stuff.
Yeah, that's what I think.
The victim is a 47-year-old man from New Jersey. I think it's stolen.
Suddenly, I don't feel so bad about my Strat. I left it in my car.
You got it stolen?
Same thing, just so tired. I'll get it tomorrow. Just not even in the case, just right in the front seat.
Oh, so you were one of those dudes
One
that
of
we
those
learned the lesson
retards.
from.
Yeah. I mean,
Has that ever happened to you, Gary?
I had stuff stolen out of my car.
Yeah.
It happened one time in the mid-'70s. I had all my drums in the back seat, and I was in like Vermont near the Hollywood freeway parked. Mm-hmm. And I left my car unlocked.
Oh, whoa.
And so my drums got pinched.
Is that what people did in the 70s?
I think I don't
didn't lock anything in the 70s.
Back then we didn't have cars that had automatic locking doors. So
you had to physically lock
them, and I think I left one of the doors unlocked, unbeknownst to. Anyway, my stuff got pinched, but the guys who was visiting up that part of town knew everybody, and they actually found my drums and got them back for me.
Oh, sweet!
And it was some kids that grabbed them.
Okay.
So I guess I got lucky. I've never really had anything stolen that I can remember out of my car.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Wow. Didn't ZZ Top got all their stuff ripped off and they got it all back, I think, or most of it, yeah.
Really?
That's like super rare.
Yeah.
Some fan got it back years later.
I have an interesting story. I was looking at the MSN homepage today, and there's a Coca-Cola commercial coming up that they're going to show on Super Bowl Sunday, and it portrays a bunch of different kinds of people chasing a big Coke mirage in the middle of a desert, and it starts out with a guy dressed up as a sheik or something, and sort of paying homage to Lawrence of Arabia, right? Yeah. And it's all movie characters, and so some Arab person was trying to blame Coca-Cola and saying that they're racist and they're anti-Arab.
Yeah.
Arab, and I thought that was amazing because it's just basically a takeoff on movies.
I mean, for us, that's one of my favorite movies, but I guess somebody a lot younger, they probably have never even heard of that movie, much less seen it. So maybe they're like, "Why in the hell is this Arab in the desert running?" But take it personally.
But now that places like the Middle East have technology, you'd think that they would find access to all our culture, all the movies, things that we take for granted.
Isn't that all satanic? Why would you want to access that?
I don't know, but they obviously didn't know about Priscilla of the Desert. They didn't know about Lawrence of Arabia. They didn't know about Mad Max. It was all these movies that had sort of an Australian kind of theme, and they were oblivious to it. They thought that was racist.
They need to have a Coke and a smile.
Yeah,
maybe that was what it was about, having a Coke and a smile.
Yeah.
Get over it. Let's get together.
Right.
But every it seems like we hear more and more about all kinds of people getting mad about things that are going on in the media. Pointing fingers at the media, like media's done something wrong, and I just think it's an amazing time.
No, you're right. I mean, yeah, you're definitely right, because I think people are quick to just attack anything that they're mildly offended by. But the thing that blows me away is it's kind of what you're saying is people are offended by stuff that we would never even think of it in that context.
Yes.
It's like some random comment. Like Black Monday that's racial.
Yeah.
You shouldn't say that. That's just weird to me, that kind of thinking. But I guess since I can't put myself in that position because I'm not in that kind of circle that would get offended by it. So I have no concept of it.
And it's so funny because we have so much technology now, and we have access to so much information. Right. You'd think people would learn from it, and there'd be less.
I think it's opposite.
It'd be more mellow.
They get overloaded because it's everything. They have access to all this stuff. So
get mad.
Yeah,
get mad
and sue everybody.
Yeah.
What's happened to humor?
Yeah.
Can you make fun of anyone anymore? Because I like making fun of everybody.
Now it's totally dead. There you go.
There you're back. Welcome back.
No, I was gonna actually. I wanted to ask you about. I think you came from a rad time period where music and touring and everything was, I think, totally different in the 70s and maybe throughout the 80s too. And it started to change in the 90s. So you've played through that entire period. How would you say things were different in the 70s when you were first touring at that time period?
I just remember that there was a lot of live playing. As soon as I got out of high school, I got a job, and I was playing 7 nights a week on Catalina Island, 7 nights a week, 5 sets a night. And I just remember that there was a lot of opportunity to play music on sort of a local level where, for entertainment, people had bands, they had people playing music, and it was and it wasn't just like a Friday or Saturday night thing. It was almost all nights of the week.
But what about it a pro level
so that's how it started for me, right? Mm-hmm. And so by being out there playing, I would begin to meet people. When I was in Catalina playing there 7 nights, I met a guy who was a recording engineer named Steve Mitchell, and he said, "Hey man, you're a great young drummer. I work at A&M Studios. Would you come? Would you want to come?"
This is when you're out of high school.
This year I got out of high school. He goes, "Would you like to come play on some recordings?" And I go, "Well, what are you talking about?" I said, "Well, we have a publishing company called Irving Almo, and you'd be great. You should come play." And I said,
"That's
great."
Awesome, yeah.
So within a couple of weeks, I got a call to go play on a demo session.
Who was that?
That was for a songwriter named Bernard Eigner, and he actually was the guy that got me on the Shirley Bassey album because he was producing a song on Shirley Bassey. So it was, for me, it was this trail, like, that got me to where I started to do more high-end gigs. And it wasn't...
That happened relatively quickly, right?
When I look back at it
like
now...
a whirlwind.
It was like a whirlwind,
blazing a trail.
Yeah.
That's right.
So, I went from playing with my music teacher in high school, learning how to play casuals and playing in rock and roll bands, and then immediately got this gig on Catalina Island, and out of that I got access to the recording world. Then I realized that I could probably become more successful doing this if I wanted to.
You mean the recording side of it, or in general?
Just
everything?
Music in general, because I had no idea how it was going to go. I was just sort of rolling with it.
Right.
And I wasn't even 20 years old yet,
Wow.
And I'm
Sweet.
And so...
How old were you when you started taking drums seriously, started really getting into it? Was that like high school, or were you doing way before then?
Well, I got the first set of drums when I was in 6th grade, but I think it was the summer between 9th and 10th grade.
You know what I think
I
is
really
really
took
cool
it serious.
about? I think it's cool about that, because when I was a kid trying to learn how to play, I felt like I was at a big disadvantage because I read these interviews of guys that started when they're like 5.
Right.
And then when I read like Eric Clapton started when he was 15, then I felt like, oh well, maybe there is,
There's hope.
I can get good in this period of time or whatever.
Yeah, I was always interested in it, but I would play for a day or two, and then I put the stuff back in the closet.
Right.
And it wasn't until like high school, between 9th and 10th grade.
Was that one of those closets where you open it up and all the drums fall out?
Exactly. And then I couldn't find the bass drum pedal,
Right,
stuff would be missing,
Just makeshift.
But I remember when I got motivated and I bought an album by The Who called Live at Leeds.
Yeah, totally.
And I would listen to the drumming and I would go, man, what is he doing? And I'd set the drums up in the back room at my parents' house, and I just started to
bash on everything.
Jam along with it.
jam along with it. And I
Sweet.
realized after a short period of time I had no idea what I was doing. So I started
There's a lot of people that didn't hold them back.
Right.
So I started taking the lessons and I started studying the instrument, and I still study to this day. So I'm always working on drumming. It's been a lifetime of working on it.
And so who were the first big names that you were actually on tour with, like in that kind of period in the 70s? Was it somebody that people would know?
I would say the first thing, I played with a lot of people, but the first act that I played at that was sort of a national or an international act was with Etta James.
Oh yeah.
I started playing with Etta James I think when I was 22. I'd done a lot of things prior to that, but they were like sort of like cabaret kind of shows and stuff like that.
So with Etta James, what were the gigs like? Was that kind of music as popular as it became, or was it kind of a lull in that?
She played clubs. We played the old Lighthouse in Hermosa Beach, and we played a couple places in Santa Barbara.
Right.
And then she got a new record deal on Warner Brothers, and Warner Brothers got behind her, and we actually had a tour bus, and I think we opened some shows for some national acts.
Your first tour bus with Etta James?
Yeah, that was my first experience touring.
When were you to the point where you're playing arenas and stuff like that? Did that take a while, or?
Well, it came in 1978. I got asked to tour a world tour with Olivia Newton-John.
Sweet.
Right after Grease.
I was going to say.
That was probably the peak of her career, right?
She was huge. She was an international superstar. And so for me, that was like going from playing for not a lot of money and average accommodations and transportation to be all of a sudden being like a celebrity.
Right.
And then from Olivia on, it was pretty much through the late 70s up till the 90s. I went from Olivia to Cher, and then from Cher I wound up playing with, I think, Eddie Money after Cher, and then after Eddie Money, Gary Moore, and then Gary Moore to Charlie Sexton, and then
so some of these kind of gigs you're mentioning, like for instance, like Cher and Eddie Money, what was there just tremendous adulation from the crowd when you're playing? Were people going totally crazy, or was it kind of?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Cher's gig was more a Vegas type of show. And here I am, I'm 22 years old playing Caesar's Palace, and it's sold out every night. And so the people were very enthusiastic, but I never really felt like that was where I wanted to wind up, because I sort of felt it was not rock, not the real
Vegas.
thing.
It was Vegas.
Right.
So everything I'd done prior to that, when I was working with Cher, I did side projects with Les Dudek and Glenn Hughes and all kinds of other little things trying to get something going rock. But then I got the opportunity to record and tour with Eddie Money, and that was all of a sudden, even though today that seems pretty conservative, in 1982, Eddie Money, and he was deemed like to be a rock star. He was like it was a rock band. It was truly a rock band.
Oh, I had that tape.
Yeah,
when I had my
totally.
Walkman,
Me
it
too.
was awesome.
That was the first thing I experienced where we were truly a rock band and we were out there in the rock and roll world. And Eddie was generally, at that time, well received everywhere, but especially well received like in parts of the Midwest, like in Cleveland for some reason. It was like we were gods in Cleveland. You know?
Good night, Cleveland.
That's like a good band name.
I mean,
Gods
it
of Cleveland.
was unbelievable. And then we played the US Festival with Eddie Money, and that was like in front of like, I don't know,
my God.
200,000 people.
Yeah,
right?
something.
Yeah, that was
And
insane.
Huge.
But the coolest thing that happened at the US Festival was that I had been watching MTV at my house in Manhattan Beach, and it was just this little fledgling thing, and they were running the same videos over and over and over.
Right.
And one of the DJs was a guy that I recognized from KMET. His name was JJ Jackson.
Yeah, I remember him.
And I think he was
remember that
he
name.
was either on
Right.
KLOS or KMET, right? And anyway, but he was on MTV, and so I was at the US Festival and I saw him. And I went up to him and I said, "Hey, man, you're JJ Jackson, and MTV's unbelievable. It's the future. It's going to just go crazy." And I then took him to Eddie and introduced him to Eddie Money and the management. And then right after that, we made like 4 videos as quick as we could. And they sort of got in rotation.
You were like you precipitated that whole, like him getting, because he was pretty heavily played on MTV.
Yeah. I just raved about it and pushed pretty hard for that because I saw that there was an opportunity there at that time. And Eddie made some pretty cool videos, and the whole band was in them, and so we all got to partake in that, and so it was good. But now when I watch them, they seem so conservative, and you know, like
all the early MTV videos look totally crazy. I mean, there's a few of them that came out pretty good. Like I think the Billy Idol ones are pretty good.
Yeah,
but like
some set the standard.
Yeah, but some of those early videos, like especially like kind of the hair metal bands were so yeah.
So Eddie's thing that was sort of an exposure into the rock and roll lifestyle, you know, and it was current music at the time.
I know you're involved in music education too, and when I was a kid in school, it seemed like it was pushed harder than it is now. I think a lot of schools have dropped it, and it's kind of up to the parents maybe to pick up the slack. Are you a big proponent of like parents getting their kids involved in music?
If the kids want to, yes. The unfortunate thing is for my kids, you know, in public schools, they've really cut the arts, and so music programs don't exist. And you know, so if you want to get a kid exposed to playing an instrument early on, you as a parent, you sort of have to have a role in that,
right? But you know, the other thing that trips me out too is it's always like music and arts, and it seems like there's way more respect given to all the rest of the arts, and music is kind of the redheaded stepchild of
right.
You know what I mean?
It's the stigma of band geeks.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. It's like if you're a painter or something like that, that seems to be more respected by society than being a musician. I don't know why.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's weird how it's separated. Or to me, I consider music part of the arts, you know?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, my nephew goes to junior high locally, and he wanted to play the drums, and I've taught him guitar. They forced saxophones and trumpets on him.
I think that's another totally bad mistake too, is getting your kids started in the wrong instrument, and then they end up like hating music.
That's exactly what happened.
Like, you know, learning music, learning to read.
That's what happened. He didn't like the structure because I would give him a song that he loves, and we would play it together.
Right.
And then when he sat down and was handed a flute and told read this, like he couldn't have been more unexcited about it.
Totally.
And with you guys, did you have parents who were musically inclined? Because I did.
Absolutely, I didn't. But my parents were.
I don't know who bought you a drum kit at 6 years old. I didn't. I had to beg one my whole life. I didn't get it till I was like 18.
Well, I was lucky because my parents thought that music was important. So like when I was a little kid, I went to like classical guitar lessons, which I hated because I couldn't fit my fingers. I was too little to put my fingers in a G chord formation or whatever. And the guy would like smack my wrist when when you have like the wrong technique and stuff, they just smack you.
Yeah,
that's old school. They don't do that now.
My father was convinced that he was tone deaf. And so the instrument I wanted to play wasn't drums. I didn't want to be a drummer. I wanted to be a guitarist.
Oh, rad.
And so I wanted a guitar, and I begged him and begged him and begged him for an electric guitar. And Instead, I got a snare drum.
Wow. That's like the opposite of most
It's the
parents.
exact opposite of what happened to me.
And my dad said, you learn how to play this, and then we'll get the rest of the drums. And so I banged on the snare drum, and I had no idea what to do with it. And then I said, well, if I don't get the rest of the drums, I don't really know what to do, because the music that I listened to, which was Hendrix, the Stones,
has more drums in it than
You
I
need
just
said,
some cymbals.
I don't hear a snare drum. I hear a drum beat. I
Right.
can't play a drum beat on a snare drum, Dad. And so then he wound up bringing home some other drums, and
Well, that's cool.
it was just like a novelty for me. I wasn't really committed at that time to be. I didn't really. It wasn't until later on that
the laser
right.
focus wasn't there.
Well, at that age, I mean,
But I think that learning a harmonic instrument early on is invaluable for kids,
Yeah, I
especially
mean, there's a lot of studies that say that it actually helps kids. There's something that goes on with their brain wiring that changes, actually. Like if you start playing, for instance, piano, the reading music, which is almost like learning a new language, and then the right-left-hand coordination
Right.
thing, too.
Yeah, that's right.
So,
So it does a lot of things for them. It puts a lot of things together.
yeah.
that's amazing.
All of a sudden, they start to see things in a numeric constant, in
Right.
the key,
Mhm.
and then they start to see the relationships of music in terms of the
In
space,
terms of numbers.
numbers
yeah.
like semitones or half steps or whole steps and everything like that. And so,
And the timing, too, rhythmic stuff.
and then
Right.
timing. So there's a lot of things that happen simultaneously.
Right, that's true.
Multi-dimensional kind of development.
In rock and roll, you learn how to count to 4. That's
Yeah.
pretty awesome.
Over and over again.
How do you think things have changed in music since you were growing up? I kind of feel like I've kind of harped on this, but I think kids' attention is so distracted nowadays because there's like video games and stuff. There's all kinds of stuff you can waste like hours online just on YouTube. So
I
think,
do.
I think that, and I think that kind of focus where maybe kids before the internet, and
Right.
you
all
would
of
put
us.
more time into an instrument because you're bored or whatever, or you just you're focused in on it. Now it's like there's all these different things pulling on kids' attention and interest that it sort of seems like they don't end up putting that kind of time into a musical instrument.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think with electronics today that young people can really, really lose themselves. I think that increases ADD or it stops kids from being able to maintain focus. And
you mean by electronics, you mean like computer devices like
vid-
iPads and
all of that,
computers
video
and
games,
phones.
all of it,
Yeah.
know, from Wii games to Xbox 360s to iPads,
Right.
all of it. The truth is it's not going away, so you have to monitor them and limit their access to it so that they don't spend that much time on them. And, my experience at the music school that I've been teaching at is that we have a lot of young people that are highly committed to becoming proficient at the instrument. They're serious. They work really hard at it. And they actually use the technology to help them. They'll
Right.
study
That's
people
cool.
by YouTube.
I was going to say there is a
Yeah.
flip side because I teach both my nephews. They're in high school and one's in junior high, and I'm astonished at how fast he can learn something if I keep him interested.
Right.
I mean, my dad taught me, loved
definitely-
me 2 times on the guitar, and I couldn't have been more unexcited. And my nephew's picking apart Megadeth riffs.
Yeah,
and just blowing my mind.
The thing about the internet, I think, like you, it increases ADD, but also there's instant access to
Absolutely.
any kind of information. you
Like
could
Gary
think
said,
of.
they're pulling up tab, and
Right.
like my nephews are showing me the tab. Teach me this.
Right.
It's crazy.
We just have to hope that we can instill like some kind of discipline in these young people
That's
so
the key.
that they
Focus.
focus and want to become
Right.
more proficient. And
I think it's cool that you get to see that though, because I see most kids I know, they're putting way more time into skateboarding than like any kind of instrument. And so you see a group of kids that are totally motivated to play music. That's what they're all about.
yeah, they're out there.
Yeah.
It's,
Right.
I mean, I
Do you
don't
think that group is diminished? Is it a smaller group now?
No, I don't think it's necessarily smaller. Like when I was growing up, there were kids that played in the traditional band,
Right.
horns and saxophones
Right.
and all that, and marching band and all that.
The band geeks.
And they were sort of
Yes.
geeks, Then there were other kids that, wanted to play more contemporary. They wanted to play like rock, jazz, prog rock, and stuff like that.
Right.
And I was part of that group, and there weren't that many of us. I can remember my chums in high school being on, not more than both hands, my group
Right.
of friends that were listening to Genesis and Yes with me and all that kind of stuff,
When I was a kid, I could go outside and there's bands playing on my block all the time.
Nice.
I never hear that. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I noticed that's diminished radically. I don't know if it's because bands go to rehearsal places now or just there's way less bands.
I don't know. I know that pursuing a career in music is certainly not the wisest career choice today, and so hopefully
Fiscally speaking,
parents are wise enough to try to let them do music for fun, but keep them focused so that they can have a livelihood. Because because I pretty much just said, daring like you, I do music. That's who I am. That's what I do, and I define who I am by being involved in music. I was lucky, I guess, that I can make a living for as long as I have.
Right.
But when you have a kid that's really into it, the odds are so stacked against them that they are ever going to be successful at it. How many Taylor Swifts or Miley Cyruses are there going to be, or Selena Gomez's?
Yeah.
That's just one profile. But
right.
Maybe the flip side of that is that more of those people are maybe falling by the wayside. So maybe the competition pool is kind of shrinking a little bit. So if you do have that kind of tenacity and obviously some gift, some talent, maybe we're finally starting to get to a point where it's easy to outshine the competition. Easier, still insanely difficult, but.
Well, for me, what I worry about more than anything is the content of music. What is the objective if you're a young person going to music? To write hits and to be successful, or to learn how to play and write music that you really are passionate about, that is well done,
yeah. I think that's a big, huge issue.
And I think in the 60s and 70s, you weren't so pigeonholed of being country or being rock or being rap or this,
like so genre now.
Yeah, you listen to like a lot of records from that time, and it's just pretty well done. You can listen to like Crosby, Stills and Nash record, and you'll go, "Wow, that's pretty amazing that those guys did that," and they put all those elements together.
A lot of those groups from that time period started to do kind of cross-genre kind of music where they're, like you said, not so pigeonholed. But for me, more importantly than that is the form. Like when you heard music from that time period, the chord structures and the arrangement and everything was more kind of just freestyle. People were making it up as they went along.
Yeah.
And now, there's a joke on YouTube where this guy talks about Pachelbel and a certain like chord progression, and then he plays like 30 songs that are the same exact chord progression.
Right.
And it's like that's where a lot of pop music for me is headed, where it's like the same exact structure but change the vocal melody over it, and that's kind of kills me.
That's happened historically for a while, but I just hope that there's some people that have passion about music that want to do it in an original way and not do what you just said, right? Take the same changes and write a new melody, but try to find a new voice and a new style. And the other thing was when I was growing up, a couple of record companies merged called Electro Asylum.
Right, yeah.
And so they had the Eagles were on Electro Asylum. There was this whole palette of artists. If you were to listen to them today, you'd say, well, these are sort of country influence, but they were not copying country. They were not
totally
copying rock. They were just doing what they thought was good, right? And it just happened they were oblivious to the marketplace.
You know what trips me out, because that country influence worked its way into a lot of different bands, like the bands you just mentioned, but you can also throw in like really disparate bands like Leonard Skinner or Rolling Stones even.
Yeah, absolutely.
Got a heavy country influence. That amazes me, especially because the Stones being a British band, be influenced by American country like that. It's pretty incredible. That in turn influenced what we kind of perceived to be American rock and roll bar music sort of sound.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's the one thing that I see different today is that when people go into music, they try to be really specific about what their market is. And when I was growing up, it
the
wasn't
focus group band.
Yeah,
right.
When I was growing up, it was all good. Nobody cared. You just worked on stuff that you liked.
Right.
Well,
I think like again back to the multimedia age. Oftentimes I hear we play with a lot of younger bands, and we're thinking of music. And when I talk to these younger guys, they're like, "Yeah, I wrote this little piece, but then I got this idea for a video."
Do you ever hear
not
that
a lot of
thing
work
where
gets put into
they
the
go,
music?
I got this new song. It'd be perfect for a Coke commercial.
Right.
Yeah. Well, it started out with this guy who looks like Lawrence of Arabia.
Yeah. Yeah, I think.
But it's fun.
A lot of people take themselves way too seriously.
Well, then, and these kids will come up and they'll have like matching uniforms and this.
No, I think that
nothing
goes
wrong
back
with that,
pretty
I guess,
far,
but-
though. I mean, like all those bands in the 50s and 60s were kind of doing that. Like, let's all wear the same jacket and
Right.
Well, I was in a few of those kind of
In the
bands.
theatrics.
We had where we had actually like uniforms. We
Yeah.
called them, right?
Really?
That's trippy.
Yeah, I was in this one band, and we had like the Indian costumes. We'd all dress up like
No,
Indians.
No way.
what band was that, Gary?
Cool.
No, I want to see
That's
photos.
pretty cool.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, it was like a cabaret act.
Well,
you know?
I mean,
Uh-huh.
like we had, like Devo kind of took that to
Oh yeah,
a new level, sort of.
Yeah, they did.
But even when like some of the high level rock stuff, they'd still have like a wardrobe girl, huh? Like bring here, Gary, you're gonna wear this like gold lame shirt or something.
a pirate shirt.
I just remember the first when I was in high school, I went and saw Rod Stewart with the Small Faces, and those guys were the first band that I'd seen that really looked like rock stars to me. They had like the sort of mullet, spiky hairdos,
Yeah,
and
totally.
the sort of the long sleeve shirts with the sleeves a little short, And
Dude, that hairstyle was almost like a uniform. So all
Yeah.
those guys, a lot of like Ron Wood
Man,
and
I
Rod
wanted to
Stewart,
look-
and
Ron
Jeff
Wood,
Beck,
yeah.
they all had the same hair.
They did.
I wanted to be like Ron Wood and Jeff Beck and Rod Stewart.
Yeah,
My
but your hair's
hair-
too curly.
Yeah, I know.
So-
I hate. I used to have to dry it and then hairspray it up.
Yeah,
and-
that's
Oh,
right.
yeah.
Like you were.
I was
if you
always
had,
bummed.
if you were around today, you'd have that straightening iron, huh? Rocking that thing.
So it's funny how music has changed. It's just so challenging because the industry as I knew it is pretty much gone forever.
What do you think is? What do you think are some of the opportunities for younger people to like make a career off of music? Is it
I don't
Trying to
see
get
any.
in.
I don't see any, to be honest with you.
brutal?
Tell it like it is.
What about like
I mean-
some people have actually made a really good living writing tunes for like video games and stuff like that.
I think that the people that are going to be successful in music are going to be not the players. It used to be you could be successful at being a competent player, but to
Right.
stay active in music, I think you have to be more of a composer now.
I totally agree. And, when you're first learning an instrument, when you get serious about it as an instrumentalist, you are a technician and you're working on the technical aspect of the instrument and going, I got to learn the scale, or for you, I got to learn these crazy polyrhythms. And I 100% agree. You still have to learn those things, the basics, and take in as much as you can, but composition should be your main focus.
Yeah, and that's what I tell all my students is that if they're not literate on any kind of like digital audio workstation, like Pro Tools or Logic or something, they need to immediately get into that.
Yeah.
And they need
There's some free stuff out there. Anything that works, but just start learning editing.
and to work on writing, because the opportunities I see in music today are more along the lines of composition. You talk about ringtones. Well, there
you go. Yeah.
Somebody has to write the ringtone. You talk about movie soundtracks. Well, somebody has to write those movie soundtracks. You talk about
And that requires way more literacy usually than most people.
those are parts of music that you can still make money, composing for film and for ringtones and other things. But, the idea that you're going to become really proficient on your instrument and start a great band, or just become a really good musician and you're going to work and play on records, that's what I wanted to do. I didn't really want to compose. I just wanted to play with everybody. I wanted to play on records.
Right.
I wanted to be a studio musician. That's what I wanted to be and what I became. And that job description is sort of like gone now.
What happened in the 80s, I think it was, when a lot of drummers were freaking out because drum machines made their first appearance, and it's like, we're going to get replaced.
I remember it clearly.
Oh no.
Was that a moment of terror for all you guys?
Well, it was sort of like a revelation, really, because I remember I was working on this Eddie Money music, and this guy named Dwayne Hitchings came down, and he was a keyboard player. He was in cahoots with Oberheim, and so he had
I like that, in cahoots.
he had like the
It's a great drum conspiracy.
Totally.
he had like an OVX drum machine synced up to like some keyboards with a sequencer, so that you could literally hold down a key and it would go do 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 do, and the drums would go. And he wrote that song for Rod Stewart called "Young Turks" and some of these things that were some of the first drum machine kind of sequencing. So we're down at Leeds rehearsing, and Dwayne's got this rig, and I go up to it and I hold down a key, and it goes do do da do, and the drums are totally locked. And so it was the first time.
He's like, hey, everybody's playing perfect.
It was the first time you could really hear the drums like totally locked.
Right.
And it was like, wow. And it was so new and unusual sounding that it sounded great. You know? but now that just sounds so horrible.
Yeah, that's what. If you go on
You
Netflix and
absolutely
watch
hate it.
any like movie from the '80s, you'll hear.
Oh no!
It's like all over the place.
But that was like, oh my God, because as a drummer, that's what we'd been trying to do for all along, right?
You're trying to play perfect.
The perfect tempo. Like,
That's not music, really. Just like
No.
cutting and pasting
Yeah.
today in Pro Tools. It's funny. I saw a tutorial of someone composing a Melodyne, and they just take these snippets and they just drag them in and move them around and
Right,
edit them,
right.
and all of a sudden it's like they take these little fragments and create like music out of it. And
Well, I mean, all the
like
guys that are doing
unbelievable.
electronic music, that's how they're creating it. They're basically,
puzzle piecing it together.
they're creating loops and figures, and then just kind of like copy paste throughout the whole thing, and dropping instruments in and out, sort of.
so we're creating this new category of music person that's basically a junk man, just like goes to the junkyard and finds all these things and puts
Exactly.
it together, and then they they use technology to get it in tune and in time.
There you
The
go.
technological junk
I
man.
mean, it's like it's
for
unbelievable.
me,
to
it's kind of
Yeah.
like data entry.
Yeah.
It's
Right,
like
right.
data entry music.
Exactly.
And
Remember, like a
Exactly.
long time ago, somebody get hired just to type
Yeah.
on the computer and cut
And-
and paste word processing. Shit.
And I guess that goes back to, we were talking about the 60s, late 60s and 70s, about people having vision as composers and stuff. And I hope that there are still young people that want to pick up an instrument and become proficient enough that they can play something and then sing along with it, or just
Right.
create something that's truly their own, not a
Not
combination.
steal from other people
Yeah.
and make them.
Yeah.
I mean,
Right.
it seems like all of music is heading toward just mashup. I took this
Right.
from this person, this, and then this is my own unique piece, and it's like you didn't play anything on that entire piece.
but but maybe, and this is another side of this that I don't always acknowledge, but maybe like guys like Dead Mau and Skill Rex, maybe if you actually had to do what they do, you would see that they bring something to it that makes them special.
Well, when
Right.
like in the defense of guys like Skrillex, when I first heard that, I was like, wow, this guy is creating something that I see how it's got a lot of energy to it, and it's really impactful, going from that breakdown thing to the drop where everything comes in slamming. But after about like hearing 5 or 10 of those songs, everything started sounding like the same exact format. And that goes back to what we were talking about, is trying to come up with a unique arrangement and style where not everything's just sounding the same. So much music to me is just sounding like the same crap.
yeah.
And that even extends to the whole like acoustic guitar or piano singer-songwriter. Like that stuff all sounds the same to me too. Everybody's going for the same voice. Oh, Taylor Swift is popular, so I'm going to try to make my voice sound
Right.
like her. And it's killing me. The homogenization of music is killing me. I mean, I'm not really into those bands like Yes or Genesis when they came out, but I would totally support any kids that tried to do that kind of crazy crap, because it's
Something
breaking the
fresh
boundaries.
and
Yeah,
right,
exactly.
right.
Yeah.
To me, it's the same thing in movies. Like all the movies are Spider-Man 5.
Yeah. And
like,
yeah, exactly. There's
really,
the creativity
in all art
in
forms,
all, yeah.
people are
Except
getting
for-
less creative.
maybe that goes back to what I was saying about like visual arts, like actual arts, like painting and sculpture and stuff doesn't suffer from that as much.
Right.
know
Creating
why.
something from the ground up as
Yeah.
opposed to taking an idea and
And possibly in years to come, we'll recognize things that we're not getting right now. There will be people that work within these new technologies that will be deemed as being creative and being artists because of how they put those things together. But for me at this stage, it's hard for me to see it because I'm so married to the past and
Right.
certainly in
Right.
music, the ideology of how music was made in the past, where it basically starts with one person with a guitar and they sing the song, or we want to see people do it in what I would call more of an honest approach,
like
where
a natural
it
progression.
comes from within them, not like lifting things.
Like when you say honest, to me, what comes in my head is just creating something fresh and original.
Yeah,
instead
absolutely.
of like,
Right.
well, this thing has been popular on K-Rock, so I'm going to try to do
Exactly.
something like that.
Something you're
So I can
passionate
get
about.
played on K-Rock. It's like, just do what your own personal vision, and then you hope that it gets played on K-Rock, but do something honest to yourself.
Yeah. And to do that, you can't have any expectations that it's going to be successful or not. And
Yeah, exactly.
And
Right.
so that's sort of the deal breaker for a lot of people, because there was a time when I was growing up that, I thought that I could get rich being involved in music.
You were surrounded by that. You saw it all the time, so it seems doable for you.
And I think that today, if you can create an event around what you do musically, you can probably generate revenue. But that's challenging and takes time. And I sure would like to see some young voices, young people doing music in a different way that I like.
Yeah.
The problem I have is a lot of new music that I hear or that I try to find. I don't always like it. There's not a lot of depth to it.
Yeah, me too. But for me, I don't even have to like it as long as I can respect it.
Right.
I mean, like there's a lot of artists from, say, like we were talking about that period from the 60s and 70s where it's not something I'd go by, but I go, wow, that a lot of work went into that.
Right.
And
You
I
appreciate
totally
what they
appreciate
created.
that. Exactly.
Because it was their deal.
Yeah.
Not guided by...
Not a lot of new music. I can't say that about a lot of new music,
Yeah, for me, the other thing, when I was growing up, I always felt like I could find there were sources to find new music, and I don't know where to find new music today.
Like the old record stores and stuff.
Yeah,
you go in and just kind of leaf through
record stores and maybe radio stations. I don't think radio stations in the late 60s and 70s were so dependent, and certainly FM radio weren't so dependent on advertisement and what they played.
Right.
Like we went from AM radio, which was the top 40, which was just every other song was just, endless commercials, to FM where now we had no commercials.
Right.
And they would play songs that were longer than 2.5 minutes. They could play play something 8 minutes long.
They broke out of that format, yeah.
And there were no rules. It was wide open and it was exciting. And then...
So basically, FM radio has kind of become AM radio, right?
It has.
Right.
It has. And now, on the internet, we've got Pandora, which is sort of cool, but, how do you get new music on Pandora?
Dude, when I got bummed out on Pandora is I was listening to a bunch of like hard rock or country rock stuff or something like that, and then it makes suggestions for you based on what you were listening to,
the genre you're listening to.
Then it said, our next suggestion for you is Whitney Houston. And I go, man, this thing's broken.
Thumbs down.
Yeah, okay, enough of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. I mean, where is your resource for finding out about new music? It's tough. There's a ton of it on the internet, but how do you weed through that insane pile of noise,
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't have time to research, but maybe kids do. Maybe they...
Yeah, I think kids are pretty good about networking and finding out the new stuff, but I think it is more difficult to get turned on to stuff.
Yeah.
And I miss the mysticism. I used to thumb through albums. There would be one picture, maybe some art, maybe one picture live, and you'd stare at it and listen to the album 100 times, and my mind would go crazy. Now, you know what their favorite color is. Like, you start to hate these people.
I think you
I don't want to know so much about them.
I bought a lot of records just based on the album cover art alone, and now on a CD, it's like, it's a postage stamp compared to what it was.
Through high school, the record store was a resource. It was sort of like a library for me, and my friend Billy used to work there, and if there was anything I wanted to hear before I would buy it, he would actually open a copy up and play it. And so
yeah, I mean, all that stuff's gone. I used to go down to Scooter's Records, same thing, and Offbeat.
Yeah.
When we were all there.
And just stumble in and look,
gone.
like just off whim.
And the guys, like Gary said, he'd make suggestions for you.
Yeah.
You might be into this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would start to buy records based on the players on them. And
right.
That's how I sort of got in tune with being a studio musician, because when I would go into the record store and I'd look at all these new records and I'd see who the players were, and I'd go, okay, this guy, and I'd say, well, that's what I want to do. I want to play on records,
Right.
So that was sort of a motivator for me, and I think that kind of work is just not the same today,
because kids are just like going, I'll play this loop or I'll program it.
Right.
So it's changed in my lifetime for sure, as well as the technology of how we listen to it, how we document it. I guess from vinyl to reel to cassette to DAT to
iPhone.
Now it's MP3, right?
Yeah.
CD.
Yeah,
I mean,
download.
the CD is gone, right?
It's funny because like a lot of people don't even know that CD is like a way better quality than MP3. Like people think they're the same, but they're totally not.
Wasn't it you? We call it the new business card.
Yeah.
Our CDs were just
CDs.
Take my
I think
card.
I got that from Bob Biles.
Yeah. Here's my card.
Yeah.
Yes,
And a CD.
Yeah, exactly.
That's funny.
We're almost out of business cards.
Right.
That's so true, though.
It is. It's like something you give away. It doesn't have value like it used to. People used to go, "Oh wow, a CD. This is at least worth like $7 or something." Now it's like the guy working at 7-Eleven just gave me one too.
Right.
Everybody has a CD.
Yeah. Boy.
And now it's like almost CDs are passé. Pretty soon they'll be handing you like flash drives.
Right.
I watched a movie. It's called Pitch Perfect. And it's basically a story of a cappella groups competing against each other today, right? And they're really good. And so there's this one scene where this young girl goes into the college radio station, and she goes to the guy, "Hey, will you play my music?" And she does exactly what you just said. She hands him a flash drive.
Oh, that's right.
Not a CD, not a tape, but a flash drive. Like, here's my
awesome.
CD, and gives him a flash drive.
Yeah.
Or here's my music on a flash drive. And it was funny, this college DJ in the radio station, he had like an ashtray full of them. Full of flash drives, you
That
know.
people gave him, that's
that people
rad.
gave him to watch to play my music, right?
That's cool. The takeaway from this is to get involved in music, and you get serious about it, but don't get carried away with delusions of grandeur, like dreams of like ultra rich. I'm gonna buy me a yacht like P. Diddy.
Well, there will always be work for musicians in certain styles. Like if you're a young person and you want to be a cellist and you have any talent, you become proficient enough you can play in an orchestra, you'll always be able to play in orchestras, because there
Right.
are people that still like to
You
go
can
hear
do it
orchestra.
for a long period of time.
But
I think I kind of dissed the technical aspect of it, but I think that still exists. Like, for instance, if you wanted to be a drummer, and if you really got to be an incredibly great drummer, you can make a career off that, because you would be one of the best, and there's always a desire for that.
what I found, I see young people getting better earlier than in their life, than I think ever before in the history of the instrument.
Right.
You know?
Really?
That's what I'm seeing.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, I see people getting really good really fast.
Yeah.
And what's that about? Is that an ADD thing?
Well, I don't. Well, yeah.
Like,
that-
I mean
that are-
OCD, not ADD.
You mean
Right.
ADD helps drummers, right?
Yeah.
I think it's the technology, and I think that a lot of times now parents sort of impose their will about their, no, you're going to play this instrument, and they've sort of forced the kids into it. And
Wow.
and I just think that you see these young people, they're extremely proficient, yet they don't know what not to play. So
I think that's a good point.
That's one of the things that I
Right.
see that sort of I hope is what keeps me working.
I think you're onto something there, because half the times when I see young bands, it sounds like the drummer's soloing.
Exactly. So, it's an amazing thing how proficient they can become, but they don't know how to edit their playing. They
Yeah,
don't.
I agree with that 100%.
overkill.
Yeah.
So, I see this proficiency develops really fast, but then they don't know how to edit their playing and play within the form.
Do you think that that's because there's less of the session drumming thing going on? Like when you're a drummer starting out and you go into a studio and then the producer starts yelling at you.
I had producers say, whenever I played something complicated or flashy, they'd go, "That's really nice. Save it for your album." And it took me a while to figure out what they meant by that.
What are
because
producers in their one-liners? Sounds like Darian.
There must be a book on that. somewhere.
Totally.
it would hurt my feelings, but then I realized that that they were seeing the picture in a different way.
Right.
They didn't really care about what I could do. They wanted the sound of the instrument, but it had to make sense in terms of the style of the music or for the vocalist. And so all of a sudden I learned early on, I can't overshadow the vocalist.
Yeah, well, I think every musician who gets into trying to play in a studio context, you go through that struggle where you are just learning that you have to play a supportive role, and that usually comes from an outside source, and then you get totally butthurt about it, like you said. But then eventually over time you realize, you go, okay, the main focus is the vocals or whatever, and I have to stop shredding and let that person shine through.
Yeah, that's a big thing, because at the music school that I would teach at, we have a lot of drum practice rooms, and you'll walk down the hallway and there'll be 20 guys playing drums, and they're all playing the same beat. It's all same tempo, and they're all doing the same fills, and they're all just shredding.
Yeah.
They got some amazing chops, but you tell them to play to the click and play even and hit the drums consistent. All of a sudden, all these other things that come into play when you record, and they really struggle with it. I don't know. Maybe music was different when I was growing up. I think drumming maybe was simpler than it is today. But
What do you mean? Is it more scrutinized? Like what you just said, stick control, hitting consistently.
I think
Did Keith Moon just go in there and just annihilate it, and
Well, I
they
guess-
rolled with it?
Yeah, I guess guys like Keith Moon were around, and Mitch Mitchell. There were guys that
Mitch
played
Mitchell,
actively, guys that played busy. But for me, my workplace was, I was encouraged to play simple. And when I would play something simple at the exact right time, I would get like, commended. I'd hear like positive things like, oh, that was great, man. That's perfect. And so part of my education was hear somebody say something good about what I did. I would make a note and go, okay, so that they like that. So I'm going to stay in that vein. And I guess I was learning how to edit my playing through that. And,
it's like a self-censorship that you go through.
Yeah. And I don't know if young people get that opportunity.
That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah, I think they're not having that input, so that they just are going totally haywire, and they go, "This is bitching."
Yeah.
But to an outside listener, you go, "This sounds like an entire band falling down a flight of stairs."
You can get a really good feeling from simple drumming and simple music, and I think that a lot of times the value of that, kids don't get that.
I think I might be off base, but I think one thing maybe that we have an advantage of is growing up on Motown kind of music, because then you have a really simplified drum section with the kind of really melodic and harmonic bass,
powerful leading vocals,
and really super engaging vocals that gives you, like you said, a certain feeling that when we listen to Motown, we go, "Oh man, that's killer." Yeah. But I think kids nowadays, they haven't been exposed to that as much, and they definitely haven't grown up on it. Yeah. And maybe they don't have that sense, that bass, that sense of like solidity.
Right.
When I was teaching drums at the music school, I taught this one class. It was actually more like a historic perspective of music, and it included cool. drumming, right. And I would try to expose them, and I'd ask them, I go, like, do you guys know who Benny Benjamin is? And they go, no, who's that? I go, well, you've heard him. And I play like a Motown record that he played on. And they'd go, oh, yeah. And then, or I'd play James Brown track. I go, you know who Clyde Stubblefield is? And they go, no, never heard of him. And so I think going back and learning about popular music from all these generations is, if you're serious about being a musician, some of the homework you have to do. You have to go back and learn what came before you so that you can draw on it,
I mean, that seems like an obvious thing to me, but I guess it's not that.
You'd be surprised.
Yeah.
They think they think bands like Soundgarden and
that's like old
or ancient.
Yeah, man, that's like some Soundgarden
rocker stuff.
I mean, seriously, that stage. It's sort of scary,
Yeah. Well, hey, dude, I know you got to split, but I totally appreciate you coming over and being on the podcast. That's awesome.
I had fun. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Dustin,
nice seeing you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for having me.
Dustin, thanks for being a co-host.
I learned a lot today
on short notice, and we're out.
Okay.
Peace.
Peace.